College football playoff rankings were just released for the third week. I'm going to reveal them here in just a moment. If you haven't seen them already, maybe you're at work, maybe you're out on the road, you're hanging out, you're talking to your family, you didn't get to see it. I'm going to give it to you in just a second. Real quick, I'm glad you're here. I'm Brian. I hope you'll subscribe. It's free. Let's dive right in. I'm going to share my screen, and it's pretty much unchanged in the top 5. Oregon, number 1, Ohio State 2, Texas, Penn State at 4, and Indiana at 5. Now, here's where the change-ups is coming. Number 6, Notre Dame. Look at who's number 7, Alabama. 2-loss Alabama. Miami at 8. Ole Miss, 2-loss SEC team. Georgia moves into the top 10. 8-2, another 2-loss SEC team. Go to 11. You have Tennessee, who's 8-2 right now, 2-loss SEC team. Rounding out the top 12, Boise State at 9-1. Get on into, and I'm going to move a little faster here, at number 13, SMU, BYU, Texas A&M, a 2-loss SEC school, sitting at 15. Going down, 16, Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes at number 16. Clemson at 17. South Carolina, 18. Army, Tulane. Then we have 21. Arizona State, Iowa State, Missouri, UNLV. Yeah, Barry Odom doing his thing. And Illinois rounding out the top 25. Let's look at that for a second. Now, afterwards, the guys on ESPN were arguing about strength of schedule. And you know who started that? Indiana. When they talked about Indiana, I think their strength of schedule was ranked, 100, 103rd, somewhere in there. And then one of the guys brought up that Indiana hasn't played anybody. Penn State really hasn't played anybody, and the one team they did, they lost. Going down to Miami, they haven't played anybody. But they said the first team that would be out would be Tennessee, and that BYU would be in as of right now because of, if they won their conference. They won their conference, which is the Big 12. BYU would be in even though they're number 14. Winning that whole conference thing is kind of a big deal. But the thing I want to point out to you is that we're seeing more and more, and I told you this was going to happen, and the college football regular season for basically every team is over next weekend. You have the playoff. You have your playoff. You have your rivalry games next weekend. You have Clemson and South Carolina. You have Texas and Texas A&M are playing. There's a bunch of big rivalry games next weekend. We know this. And, of course, there could be some upsets. But, folks, I am telling you, you look at that top 6 through, 15? And there are some teams sitting there that has 2 losses, who has 1 loss. And then you go on up to like Indiana. You look at Miami. You look at Penn State. I don't buy Penn State, folks. I've told you this over and over. And I'm just scratching my head going, here we go again. Now. A team like Georgia, or let me rephrase this. The scenario that happened with Georgia last year, it's not going to happen this year. Now, somebody's going to be upset that they were left out at number 12 or number 11, and they were dropped. And you're going to have that argument. But this whole thing of someone who drops from number 1 to number 5, it's not going to happen this year. They can drop from number 1 to number 5, and they're going to be in. And I think that's the overreach of this new college football playoff format by tripling it in size. They didn't double it. They tripled it in size from 4 to 12. And in a few years it goes to 14, am I right? So, of course, you're going to have somebody complaining that they felt like they should have been number 12 or that they were number 11, but number 11, but, somehow someone won a conference championship. They're number 14 and they get in. But here we are. A bunch of 2-loss SEC schools. You look at Oregon, they're undefeated. You look at Ohio State, they're undefeated. Texas played Georgia and they lost. That's the only real team Texas has played this entire year. I'm not hating on you, Texas. It's just the truth. But they have one loss. They play A&M next weekend, and hey, folks, that might be loss number 2. I don't know. Nobody really buys Penn State. No one really buys Indiana at all. And the talking heads on there, and some of them I like, some of them I'm like, just give me the subject and I'll tell you whether I like them or not, or whether I really don't know. But they got to arguing about strength of schedule. Folks, I'm telling you this. I get sick and tired of, I feel like I'm trying to convince a toddler that it's a bad idea to stick their tongue in an electrical socket. Strength of schedule does matter. So, on an earlier video today, I ranted about Clemson and how Clemson, according to 24/7 Sports preseason composite of talent, Clemson is the 5th most talented football team in the country. Their roster. Yep, it's true. It's true. And I said that if you took Clemson and you put them in the Sun Belt, they shouldn't lose a game. Stop quoting Bobby Dodd. You're misquoting it, or that statement's not as good as you think it is. If I take modern day, the number 1 high school team in the country who hasn't lost in forever, and just as I say that, they might have lost over the weekend, but those guys haven't lost in forever. They're the undisputed number 1 team in the country. If they go and they play local 3A ball here in the upstate of South Carolina, they shouldn't lose a game ever, because talent matters. So if you put Clemson in the Southern Conference right now, Clemson shouldn't lose a game ever, because they have a lot more talent. That's a duh statement. I know that you've been tempered to believe otherwise, but if you have Tom Brady in his heyday with the Patriots in their heyday, and they play the worst team in the NFL, they're supposed to win every time. If they lose, they should probably hang up their cleats. Because strength of schedule matters. Nobody buys into Indiana. Nobody. And if you go and you look at that Indiana-Ohio State matchup for this weekend, Ohio State is a 13.5-point favorite this weekend against the number 5 team, undefeated team in the country. Nobody is buying that Indiana is going to go into the horseshoe and actually compete. I know going to the horseshoe is a very difficult task, and winning there, I get it. But with a team that just gave their coach an $8 million per year contract, for me, I would have waited till, after this weekend. Maybe not cough up that much money. See how he does against a real football team. But here they are again, fighting, regurgitating, barfing over strength of schedule. Folks, strength of schedule matters. That's why when I look at this, I look at this playoff and I see Oregon. Oregon's a very good football team. Ohio State, they're a really good football team. They've had some moments this year it makes you go, But Texas lost to the only good team they played, but they're number 3. Penn State lost to the only good team they played this year, but they're number 4. You get where I'm going here? Indiana, not tested. Notre Dame, 9-1. They beat Texas A&M at the very beginning of the year. But if you sit and you watch Notre Dame play, they're playing a bunch of nobodies. And if any Notre Dame fans wants to get mad at me and say, well, Clemson doesn't play anyone, and when they do, they lose, you are 100% correct. See, you didn't burn me like you thought you were going to burn me. I actually agree with you. But that reality of saying that about my team, flip right back around on you. Notre Dame has played a bunch of nobodies and lost to a nobody. They won the first game of the year against Texas A&M, and that is the feather in their cap. That's the only thing I have to retract on. But Notre Dame has a lot of proving. They have a lot to prove. Miami, still don't buy Miami. I know you have Cam Ward. Who's on your sidelines? Who's coaching for you? Who's the rest of your team? Yeah, I know about Restrepo, know about Martinez, know about Bain. Who else? Oh, I know. You want to talk about Clemson. You want to talk about how you beat Clemson last year and blah, blah, blah. No, we're talking about this year and you getting into a college football playoff and you have to play the likes of Oregon. They're not going to care who you think you are. They're going to show you who they are. They're fired up at the end of the season. They're looking pretty good. Georgia, you don't know which Georgia team you're going to get. You're going to get a team that can rip someone's head off, or are you going to get the team that just played Ole Miss, 9 days ago? 10 days ago? You don't know. Tennessee, who in a million years would have thought that it would have been their offense this season that would be their Achilles heel? If you talk to any Tennessee fan in the preseason, they were confident about their defensive line, decently confident about their linebackers, but their secondary, they were clenching their pearls over that one. But the offense, they felt pretty good about. They knew Nico, being a redshirt freshman, he was going to have some moments. But they're still number 11. BYU, I did a video on BYU last week, had some really good response from BYU fans. And if you're watching here today, I appreciate you checking out the videos and stuff. Good to hear from you. BYU, blowing it like they blew it the other day, does not give me confidence in them. I'm talking about pure football here. Not hating on your on your football team, not going out of my way to do that. I'm just saying, BYU, you just lost to a team that was 3-6. And now, the last time I checked, and while I'm here live, I'm going to check. They are a 3-point underdog to Arizona State. I know Arizona State's 8-2, but a 3-point underdog? A lot of people have a difficult time buying into BYU. Why? Because of times like this past weekend. Let's move on. Deion Sanders and his team has moved to number 16. I'm going to tell you this. Since that media storm kind of chilled out from last year and you got into this part, I can stomach Colorado a whole lot better. They're 8-2, look a lot better, playing a lot, doing some good things. The best Colorado's looked in a long time. At the same time, Colorado, what conference do they play in? Clemson at number 17. They're 8-2. Now, I want you to think about this. Clemson is 8-2. But who else is 8-2? Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Ole Miss, Alabama. You're like, Brian, why did you name out those teams? They're 8-2. Why are they so far ranked ahead of Clemson? Georgia just lost 9 days ago, and they're in the playoff at this moment. You know why? Because strength of schedule does matter. They're looking at Georgia. The playoff committee's looking at Georgia, and they're saying, we know what they did 9 days ago. We know they lost 10 days ago, whatever it was. They just didn't lose. Ole Miss beat the crap out of them. But they're at number 10. Why? Strength of schedule. Ole Miss lost to what? Kentucky? Strength of schedule. Tennessee losing that game and still at number 11. Strength of schedule. SEC, excuse me. They're in the SEC. They beat Alabama. That's why there's a bunch of 2-loss teams below the cut line And you go, well, what's the difference between them having a 2-loss and SEC? Folks, some of you are like, Brian, why are you bringing this up? We all know this. No, we all don't know this. There's a lot of people in denial. There's a lot of people who are going, la, 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 la. No. And I don't care how many times this happens in college football. For the love of anything sacred, stop lying to yourself and realize that these teams play in a tough conference, and sometimes it gets romanticized, sometimes rightfully so, that you do consider it. Look at South Carolina, the Gamecocks, number 18 in the country at 7-3. Now, yeah, Missouri, they're at number 23. Illinois, they're at number 25. But you have South Carolina ticking up. Just ticking on up. 7-3. And they're number 18 in the country. They are the highest ranked 3-loss team in the country. Right now, South Carolina Gamecocks. That's crazy. Everybody else has 1 loss. We got some 9-2s there. It's Tulane, and 9-2. Arizona State, 8-2. Iowa State, 8-2. UNLV, 8-2. South Carolina Gamecocks in front of them, 7-3. Why? Because who you play matters, and what conference you play in, it matters. It does matter. Going to get in here, say hello to a few people. Matthew King, Tennessee should have dropped further. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked they didn't. The playoff's going to be SEC versus Big Ten tournament, pretty much. What are the chances Miami has a bye week fluke? I don't know. I just don't see it happening, but it would be funny. More likely to lose to Syracuse than anyone. Brian, I'm impressed with your logic and rational take. James, thank you for your kind words. Most people, they can't stand my logic and rational take. They call it complaining and being pessimistic. Me, I call it, there is a massive blue elephant over in the corner, and everybody's acting like it's not there. But I can look at it. It's staring at me. Ooh, it just took a dump. I can smell it. Everybody has nose clips on. And they're acting like it's not there. That's just how I naturally am as a person. People can't stand that, by the way. Penn State is an average football team. Yes, I agree with you, Death Valley Tiger. 100%. James, by the way, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for that kind take. Chad Godfrey's strength of schedule is the only thing that should matter. Clemson has not played anyone except Georgia. Yep. And they got beat by 31 points. Had 9 months to prepare for them. First game. And that's what you came out with. And then go on a 6-game win streak against a bunch of nobodies team, or either nobodies or teams that have had historic fall aparts. And then everybody wanted to lie to themselves and say that. Now, I said it's okay to enjoy it, but I just kept warning people. Hey, listen, we need to be careful about how optimistic we are. It's okay to be somewhat optimistic. Hopefully some things are rolling and so on. But you need to be careful with Clemson football right now because they haven't beat anyone. And I warned a lot of people, wouldn't listen. Kind of feel like a prophet in the Bible. You just keep telling people this stuff and they go, I don't want to hear it. Their kid drops dead over here. I still don't want to hear it. Their nation falls apart. Still don't want to hear it. And I don't mean that in a sacrilegious way. It's just, I'm just sitting here going, how many times do I have to warn you about something? And it happened for you to finally stop selecting to be just so prideful and stubborn over your football team. I just don't get it. By the way, just being this wishful person who's like, if I'm just so, I have no choice but to be positive. No, you can be realistic and start putting some pressure on the university, to put some pressure on the coaching staff. They're paid a lot of money to win games, and they have the talent there still. They still have the brand. Their number one goal when they were hired and I'm talking about from the top down, was to win football games. And you can do that with virtue while still doing your job. And that's not what's happening. We all know this. Drop some likes for Brian, everybody. Thanks, Matthew. I appreciate it. Alex Randall has not done anything this year. Adam Randall, between injuries and then just whatever's went on, Adam is, I hate it for him. His career just hasn't turned out like you would think a 5-star out of, a 5-star wide receiver would turn out. Notre Dame should not be in for NIU loss. They're getting a little extra love. That Texas A&M game is what's saving them right now. They're playing Army, playing Navy, playing Southern Cal, who's falling apart, playing Virginia. I mean, and Notre Dame fans, listen, I'm not hating them yet. I'm just telling you, there's a lot of questions. There's just a lot of questions with Notre Dame right now. Thank God you're Notre Dame. Well, folks, that is the current college football playoff rankings. Not much has changed over the past, few weeks, really. Not that much has changed. Oregon State number 1. And, we're seeing Texas, Ohio State, all of these teams doing their thing. Texas still not sold on them. But, hey, they are where they're at. And watching Alabama and Ole Miss hang around Georgia, even after that loss 10 days ago, getting their tail whipped. At number 10, I'm telling you, folks, it's getting interesting. I can tell you where the committee's brain is at, and it starts with SEC. Yes, I know the Big Ten has their teams where it's at, but you're seeing a bunch of 2-loss SEC teams just trickle on in. It's just crazy. Y'all take care of yourself, and as always, go Tigers.